what I'm going to talk about is a little more general. And then come down to my present concerns. This is based on my earlier experience in the Ministry of Personal Government of India as Joint Secretary 6 Central Pay Commission, where we were looking at processes within government and with the kind of changing scenario we are currently faced with. I would just like to briefly talk about the link between technological transformation and the macroeconomic growth models. This was first brought about, the linkage, it was pointed out by Joseph Schumpeter, and various economists have further developed this model of long waves of technological development which bring about with it quantum changes in productivity. The Fordist model of the 1920s, which was the fourth long wave, was based on automobile and mass consumption. This saw development of capital-intensive, vertically integrated production. We had hierarchical work organization and division of work processes with splitting of the work into easily replicable tasks. What we see in Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, the division of labor, the archetype image, which led to enhancements in productivity and a leapfrogging in the kind of production targets which could be reached. It was also built with job security, long duration of employment, mass credit and consumption, and these new strategies were soon replicated across the globe with various geographies of mass production. You had the European models, the glorious 30 years after the World War II. You had Japan with its own hybrid Fordism. You had the German model. Various kinds of strategies were developed. However, from the 70s, we find a change in this production and the beginning of the fifth long wave, which starts after the depression in the early 1990s, where flexible firms producing variable quantities of goods for specialized markets become the norm. This was due to the limits of productivity. Limits of productivity being reached, and spatial reorganization and economies of scale had reached a limit, and the emerging technologies, where computer and informatics are the core, but nanotechnology, biotechnology, robotics, applied cognitive science, they are now marking a sea change in the kind of productivity implications, with computers and informatics being the converging point for these technologies. The high-performance work practices, which are part of this whole new scenario, see new ways of organizing work, rewarding performance, and involving employees in the decision-making process. The flexibility which is inbuilt into this high-performance work practices, which have been also advocated by ILO and which are from the new model of work everywhere. While the two systems, Fordist and post-Fordist, continue, Fordism is increasingly being found in the developing world, whereas the more productive, more value-laden post-Fordist technologies are linked to certain changes which are taking place. You have, in terms of work organization, which is my main concern, because when we talk about e-governance, we are talking about how technology affects our work processes at the bureaucratic level also. So you have a more holistic approach to meaningful work, a shift from command and control styles of management to participative management. You have job design restructuring. You have job enrichment, job enlargement, job rotation, cross-training, and other tools to enhance employee productivity. The work is now more holistic in design because various kinds of capabilities are required in the process. And this is marked with a transition in leading sectors from manufacturing to financial and producer services. Services dominate this new mode of regulation. Business services are the core support. Uneven development of peripheral areas continue. In the inaugural address yesterday, our Chief Minister had pointed out that such a period of technological change is an opportunity for developing countries like India to leapfrog and come into their own by passing certain phases of the stages of developmental growth. High-performance work practices are characteristics of new technologies based on specialized production, on outsourcing and buying. It is linked to flexible specialization and production within industrial districts. It is linked to a cultural transformation. This is the area which I would like to talk a little about, because in terms of the system of governance which we are following largely, this was a structure which was developed as part of the Fordist system of business practices and production practices. It was developed in the interwar period when basic things like the span of control by a section, the branch, the department, the whole structuring, it was carried out in the interwar period and during the war period in Britain and USA. It was also linked to certain army practices developed during the war, and this was incorporated wholesale across bureaucracies as a model of efficiency, because it is the production technology which decides the concepts of efficiency and the way we function in terms of organization of work practices. The technological development therefore implies a process of cultural transformation. There are important implications with adaptation and organizational changes, transfer of technology and economic catch-up process. But as we were discussing with our Additional Chief Secretary, the changes in organization of production and social innovation are as important as technological innovation. Flexible and less flexible forms of production methods coexist. There is growing informalization of the workforce. Non-standard work arrangements, restructuring, part-time jobs become more of a norm, leading to enhanced social responsibility for the state in terms of welfare. The challenge is a change in governance paradigm from vertical to horizontal, restructuring of routines, work processes, improved efficiency in service delivery, enhanced transparency, reduced corruption, and increased stakeholder involvement. Participatory e-governance for the individual or for the collective is more interactive, direct, and immediate. The restructuring of processes of government is the main challenge we are facing internally in every process, and as in the applications which we are developing, this becomes a key element in the success. The top-down approach is now being phased out gradually. We have democratically elected governments with acts, rules which deliver service. But the top-down approach with very little or no participation from beneficiaries or user groups or stakeholders led to suboptimal benefits. The programs were not effectively targeted, and therefore ICT becomes a tool to institutionalize stakeholder participation in the process of governance. There are different phases of e-governance. Phase one, as the Secretary Jharkhand was also just discussing, the presence, the interaction, then you go to transaction, and the final phase, which we in Gujarat are now trying out, is that of participation. The end-to-end citizen services delivery with single window interface, transfer of data documents within departments through an internal workflow, transaction processing based on internet applications through portal interface, open platforms, local language support systems, personal and community-based anytime, anywhere access mechanisms. Jan Seva Kendras are now in place, e-grams with village level access points at the Panchayat office. Community points have been developed. The next stage which are being looked at many of our programs, for instance, are personal devices, mobiles, handhelds, which will enable direct data interface with the systems in place. The interactive participatory models are mirrored in many of the state's pilots like e-Swagat, and the process of involving public in the governance in an interactive way is the main challenge which is being put into practice at the moment. The use of public input makes for better decisions. It leads to co-production of a kind, and it leads to better satisfaction in terms of service delivery. The method aims at transparency, accountability, responsiveness, and participatory decision-making, citizen empowerment with institutional participatory interface between state and individual, with various levels of participation from stakeholders, user groups, citizens, is the crux of the program. In terms of the women and child development, we have a very extensive network of Anganwadis, and malnutrition and undernutrition is one of the major challenges which all the states are facing. To reach and have an effective nutrition surveillance system, which we are developing in integration with the existing eMamta Health software, which is well documented in place and which has been recognized at the national level. Along with eMamta, where beneficiary-wise data is available for children from time of birth, the Anganwadi interface and Anganwadi data is being added. This is being done by NIC. And along with this, we have the PDS program, which is biometric, where all the family databases are linked. So with the kind of future scenario with food security bill and other kinds of issues which are being debated, the cash flow model in terms of compensation, the issues of monitoring the red and yellow category children to see that they are recover from malnutrition, the data which is required, it is of an intensive kind, and it is these challenges with a participatory model where each village will be able to track what is happening and with community support work out what is possible for them. That is the model we have in mind, which is under development. The ICT-enabled participative citizen delivery with change in work routines and process, with employee empowerment and changes in the process of work. The change from representative to direct and from passive to proactive with equal opportunity and equal access is the way we try to. This is a very general presentation, but it is what we are aiming at, and it is based with a team spirit, with flows right down from our Chief Minister, with "Sau no Saath, Sau no Vikas" as the slogan for the state. Thank you.
Wow, so